A Death and Dying Guide. A Death Introduction. Death is a common part of life. Accept death. Prepare for it. Make final arrangements. Deal with the estate now. Ponder your eternal soul. The best movie I saw about the near-death experience is called Afterlife, a documentary made in 2023 that goes back to the early pioneers Michael Sabom and Raymond Moody. It covers the story of Howard Storm, who was an atheist who had a near-death experience where he left his body, found himself in hell but had the wherewithal to sing some hymns from childhood, whereupon Jesus rescued him in a feeling of love. He became a religious minister. People and pets close to you will die. You'll mourn and think this is why life sucks for everyone except for narcissists and psychopaths, because you lose people and pets intimate with you and it makes you feel empty. Then you'll realize, like I did, that my number will come up sooner or later. The later years can be a drag because the euphoric highs that make life worthwhile, that natural inspiration goes as you realize nobody really gives a crap as old people die. The young ones are busy living as the cycle of life should be. It's a simple case of maturity to accept death and prepare for it. Death is a long decline starting at about 55 if you are lucky, because simply getting to 55 years old is a feat in itself. Many people die before then for lots of reasons. Some people say lifespan is getting shorter because of things like radiation from the Fukushima nuclear accident and other nuclear accidents not publicized where the radiation has spread worldwide. Pollution in the air. Chemicals in drinking water. Chemicals in almost all processed foods. Stress. Overuse of prescription drugs. The state of the world which seems to be on the brink of calamity. The natural extinction that is going on according to several people like Guy McPherson has got me wondering if the earth will cleanse itself of the human race soon, then start all over again. I found Hulda Clark's book Cure for All Cancers. If you read this book, you will discover and conclude that we live in a chemical toxic matrix. Everything around us has chemicals in it that contribute to weakening our immune systems and killing us. Why do so many people get Alzheimer's? Some people think it's because we ingest little bits of metals like aluminum which gather in our brains over the years and destroy us. I understand why Ernest Hemingway killed himself at 72. It's because of two things. The decline. Aging means losing testosterone at the rate of 1% a year, then I think it quickly spikes in an exponential manner starting in your late 50s so that you feel a shell of the person you once were and you look at too. The emptiness of purposelessness. The world doesn't need old people. Everything is geared for young people doing things, achieving, falling in love, having fun. No matter how you cut it, life is lame for many older people. The euphoric highs aren't there anymore. Another thing hardly anyone talks about is money. I live in Canada. I can't be wiped out financially if I get sick because we have universal public health, plus an old age pension for everyone regardless of employment history and some housing for older people. In the United States, every old person is shelling out money for their healthcare and drugs. You have to work 40 credits or so to receive Social Security payments in the later years. Everybody says to live as full and as noble a life as possible. I've watched over 1,000 near-death experience videos on YouTube. I'm tired of it now because it's a lot of hype. Ever since Raymond Moody and Betty Eadie created NDE books that sold millions of copies, the greedy publishers have pounced on the topic and have published hundreds of books about people having near-death experiences, going to heaven, encountering God, going to hell and seeing evil too. Many people say they left their bodies, implying they had a separate consciousness from their bodies. On top of that, they say they felt such a feeling of unconditional love that nothing on earth matches it. I studied exorcisms which seem to provide evidence for a supernatural dimension. Chapter 1. The Fear of Death. The Fear of Death 1. The trauma of death in Western society is that we see it as failure, as a tragedy, when the truth is that in most cases it's natural, a product of aging and illness. The best way to deal with death is to look it in the eye and face it now, so when your time comes, you'll be ready and accept it freely and calmly. The paradox of death is that everywhere we make it seem like a solemn, otherworldly event where the soul will go to heaven, as with our funeral processions and massive streams of graveyards everywhere. But on another level, invisibility and indifference are creeping in. People are now getting cremated, there are less grand, dramatic funerals these days, and overall, we simply act as though death doesn't exist and go right on living, in denial until our time comes. Then we lose consciousness and the world continues on. Death is very simple to an enlightened mind. Our culture generally tells us that life is good, death is bad, but the truth is that death is a part of life. You will die, so accept it now, and when the Reaper comes calling, welcome him and embrace him, especially if you've made it to the natural twilight of life, 70 or more years. Death is no more traumatic than taking off an old coat. You've gone as far as you can go in this life, now you have to release yourself and go to meet your God. Death is poised midway between morbid fear and a trust in God for most of us. We fear a termination of our human consciousness, but hope that God will be there to welcome us into heaven when we cross over into that alleged, ethereal other side. Is it true? Nobody really knows except for the people who claim to have had incredible supernatural experiences, but who of them can you believe? I listened to Daniel Brinkley enough on Coast to Coast late night radio, but he has admitted that the spiritual feeling he got with his near-death experience has faded away. The fear of death too. Most of us intuitively know when our time is coming due to either illness or old age. We get our affairs in order, do our confessions to God, and say goodbye to our loved ones. Most of us don't want to talk about death and prefer to live in denial around dying people, pretending they're not dying when everybody knows they are. We're so in denial about it that we often don't want to draft up wills, plan our estates, or help our parents do it because it seems so painful. Even though we generally go to hospitals to get better, most people agree that the hospital is the worst place to die. If you know you're going to die, many people are now opting to go home to be in a private setting with their family and friends. Much of our fear comes from the fear of death, the fear that the most important thing to us will cease to exist forevermore, namely ourselves as consciousness, so we create all kinds of gods and New Age phenomena to deal with this emptiness. Dostoevsky, the great Russian intellectual, was once tied up to a firing squad ready to be shot when they got the order in the nick of time that he was to be pardoned, but he never forgot that experience, which drastically influenced his writings for the rest of his life. The fear of death is probably the most incredibly overwhelming fear for just about everybody on the planet. Get it through your head that you'll die someday on an ordinary day just like today. The world won't skip a beat, and you'll feel miserable when you're old if you look back and see a generic wimp who lived by a script of a dull job, mortgage payments, and TV, and didn't do those things inside that really excited whatever passion you might have felt as a young dreamer, which all of us are before the mundanity of the real world hits at about the age of 20. I saw a woman on TV who lived through the early deterioration and death of her husband as a young man ravaged by leukemia, cancer of the blood. She said that death was a beautiful process, a part of the natural flow of the life force of the universe. We mustn't fight it, and we shouldn't. We should accept it when it comes and face the inevitable in a dignified, peaceful way. If there's a spirit world, as the New Agers claim, when you die, you'll be ready because your soul will be strong from a life well lived. If you believe in God, think as though you're part of a higher truth greater than yourself. Think as though you only have 10 minutes to live and you're looking back on your life. What do you want to see? Did you live the life you wanted to live? Are you living that lifestyle right now? Try to contemplate your last week alive in old age. This is your only shot. Get something out of it right now. The only thing that really matters is to live for soul, which means that you go beyond the regular flatline to strive to find meaning and transcendence in it all. Preparing to die / end of life info. The major causes of death are old age, coronary heart disease, stroke, cancer, Alzheimer's disease, diseases of the major organs, liver, kidneys, lungs, pancreas, etc., disease of the nervous system, other illnesses, accidents, suicide, and murder. Before birth, every human being came from somewhere unknown. After death, we all return there wherever it is, so why mourn death? You're just going back home from whence you came. You should be thankful for your life while you have it. When close ones die, I try not to mourn because it's a natural part of life. Life is for the living. I must keep on until my time comes, then walk into the ether as a mature man who accepts his death. Death is not sad, it's a natural part of life. The sad thing is that most people don't live while they're alive. They exist in mundane lives with no inspired highs to them. To be vibrantly alive right up until your death is to have lived as great a life as possible. The greatest dignity of death is the dignity of the life that has preceded it. Go gently into that good night in peace, knowing you've lived a good life. Say goodbye to your loved ones, acknowledge them, then surrender peacefully to the easy feeling of permanent sleep. Take care of your legal, financial, and personal affairs. Grief typically involves 4 stages: shock, denial, depression, and withdrawal and acceptance. You can grieve for your own future death. Talk about your feelings. Do healthy, positive activities. Avoid caffeine and alcohol because they can add to your stress. Relax. Accept help from others. Plan the future. Get proper health care. In Leo Tolstoy's story The Death of Ivan Ilyich, Ivan knows he's dying, everybody around him knows he's dying, but they all play along with the delusion that he's going to get better and everything will be fine. If you know you're dying, don't play this game. Accept it, acknowledge it, take care of your business, then face the end in peace. From the religious, spiritual view, virtually every ideology out there assumes we're immortal beings and that death is simply a rebirth into another plane of existence. The Eastern religious tradition views life as a process of self-realization to perfection, generally through reincarnation, to eventually reach Satori and merge back with the spiritual energy of life known as the universal life force or the cosmic consciousness. The Western religious tradition generally has a code of conduct like the 10 Commandments, which you must follow to be like God, to try to become perfect like Him, a good, ethical person striving to be a compassionate, loving human being so you can eventually get to heaven after being judged worthy and live in bliss with all the other good, worthy spiritual creatures there. Both religious viewpoints plus virtually all of New Ageism assert that we're spiritual beings living in physical bodies which will be cast off at some point as our souls continue on to bigger and better things. Whether it's true or not, no one will know until shortly after death, which will either be permanent sleep or a movement to another plane of existence. Either way, it's the best way to approach death. To think as though there's something after and you're going on to meet a higher consciousness in some form. The easiest way to face death is to accept it, kinda like the old guy in Caligula, the story about Roman Emperor Caesar, who explored the process out loud as he crossed over. Make a conscious determination to live a great life until the moment of your death. If you're lucky, you'll accept your death and your last few days will be peaceful. The more you connect death with a process of transformation into another phase of the journey, the happier you'll be. Your loved ones will either try to push it away or reassure you somehow. Give them leeway because death is a tough deal in our society, although other societies deify it because they presume the soul is gone on to a better life in heaven somewhere. Death should be a peaceful, primal act, yet modern death in a hospital and then the capitalist burial ceremony seems too sterile and packaged for this natural process. It should be less structured, more peaceful and contemplative, kinda like ashes to ashes, dust to dust, returning to the life force from whence you came. Your body will wear out and fail at some point in time in a process called old age, a major cause of death. If you live to 70 years as it says in the Bible, you've beaten the odds, you've lived 70 years, a full life by anybody's standards today and in all of past history. To accept it with dignity when it comes is to die a peaceful death. Death is often filled with intense emotional trauma for everyone involved, the one dying, the ones who love him and the acquaintances who have to deal with it. Enlightened people minimize the drama by accepting their inevitable deaths as part of the life process and instructing their loved ones not to mourn but to accept the death and go on living as great lives as they can, because their time too will be up someday. If there's an afterlife, we may meet again, but until then, move on, simply keep on living because it's all we got. If you take care of yourself, you'll have a long, happy, healthy life. If you don't, you'll go to the hospital with some disease like Alzheimer's, heart disease or cancer, they'll hook you up to all kinds of medical technology which may cure you for the moment, but you as a holistic unit will still be out of balance. So unless you find your own internal balance by taking care of yourself, you'll eventually end up in one of those god-awful sterile hospital rooms connected to all kinds of things where you'll die. When you get sick, sure, go to the hospital and get some help, but don't fight it too much. Go home, continue doing what you've been doing, living an inspired life. Then when the time comes, it'll be at home, in peace, doing what you love to do, surrounded by people you love in a natural setting where you belong. Dying is a process, death the destination. Why not look forward to it in peace? Imagine a big white room with no windows or doors in it. You're in the middle laying on a big white bed. How do you feel about this situation? Does it seem peaceful or stifling? Some psychologist somewhere says that this simple test is your unconscious projection of what you feel about death. It should be peaceful, relaxed and calm. Dying is natural. You can do it well, especially if you've lived long, happy, and healthy. Look at it as your soul leaving your body to enter the next stage in the evolution of your life. Nobody really knows the great secrets of the universe if, in fact, they exist at all. The mystery of life after death is something we can only find out at death, if there's anything there. If not, we're dead, so what? No consciousness, we can't feel anything anyway, it's finally over. Chapter 2. Dying Essays. The Dying Process 1. Based on everything I've seen about death, the Bill Moyers TV series for PBS, pbs.org, many religious books, the Tibetan Book of the Dead, books on grief and bereavement, academic books, and even inspirational books dealing with death, I've come to 4 major conclusions about the dying process. Firstly, contemplation of aging and death regardless of age is a wise thing to do because it helps you see your life crystal clear right now, come to the right conclusions about what's real, and it should help keep you focused on living a full, passionate life. If you knew today was your last day or the next contact you have with someone is your last ever, how many trivial things would this eliminate from your life? Live like you're about to die, and it should cut all the bull out of your life. Live purely doing nothing against your conscience and you'll be ready to die anytime. The length of life doesn't matter so much as depth and quality, being true to yourself throughout. Live like this and you can look death in the face at any time and let it take you with no qualms whatsoever. To be ready to die frees us from all bondage. We as humans are aware of our future deaths. We should accept this as a great gift from the universe. Animals don't know any better. They don't see it coming, which is why we should be thankful we know and use this knowledge to live great, inspired lives. Don't be afraid to die and you'll live a great life. Maybe we're fully conscious of entering another state of consciousness into a great life, or maybe it's a peaceful time of permanent sleep. Either way, you're finally going home for the last time as far as life on planet Earth is concerned. Secondly, youth is a gift of nature, aging gracefully, a work of art. Just because you now have a snow-capped mountain for a head, life shouldn't really be all that different for you. Your consciousness, aka your soul, stays the same throughout your entire lifetime. Aging is a more peaceful phase of the vitality of youth. Never stop your sense of awe, curiosity, and wonder about the world, nor your striving, enchantment, love, adventure and passion for life. If you were running a race, logic would tell you to run faster near the end, not slow down. Thirdly, death is a natural part of life, just as a leaf falls off a tree, yet we humans make it out to be such a great, sad tragedy. Dying's a part of living. Whatever nature creates is good and right, therefore natural death at the end of a long life is good and right. If you live a good full life now, you'll be ready when it comes, as natural and calm as a leaf falling off a tree. Accept it as passing on to the next stage of life, the next level of consciousness. Just like an apple ripens then falls off a tree, let your life ripen then go to sleep. Fourthly, just about all wise people throughout history have chosen to believe that our bodies are just containers for our souls, which are part of a universal life force / Godhead, which we merge with at death to enter the next level of consciousness. Belief in the infinite is the best way to go. To accept physical death as part of the natural order where you transition into a spiritual plane is the way to live your life and deal with it when it comes. Think of death as the soul coming to full bloom, leaving the body behind. We're all uncertain, that's for sure, yet we all want comfort about our deaths. A full life lived with gusto, goodness, and passion will make you feel righteously spent as you age, that you got it out of your system, whatever it was in your soul that you were born with that made you strive to do something with it, to get it out and do something good, inspiring and helpful to yourself and for humanity. To have this feeling of a life well lived is the greatest prize. Then simply approach death as the next part of the natural order, either a time for sleep or a time for the next adventure. Whichever way you choose to think about it should be irrelevant, since the goal is to approach death with peace in your soul. Do as I do, contemplate both options, make peace with them, then forget about them as you live your life fully until the bitter end. Make peace with death and simply know that the time for living is now, so go do it, live your life so you'll be ready when it's time to lay down and go for that final sleep. The two things that people hate most about dying is the pain near the time of physical death, plus the denial by everybody around them who don't want to deal with it and act like the person is going to recover and live forever. Pain has become a major vital sign in treating terminal patients. The medical community strives to make them comfortable and send them home if possible, although the problem is that professional home health care is not covered by most health insurance plans, so many patients stay in the hospital and die there in that awful, sterile environment. If you have family and friends who can take care of you at home, it's better than staying in the hospital. Palliative care is the term used to denote the medical team at the hospital who oversee dying patients, made up of doctors, nurses, aides, psychiatrists, social workers, death specialists, etc. They try to heal people, keep them alive, then when all else fails, go for comfort. Hospice or home care is the last stage where it's terminal and you go there for comfort during your last days. Death is tough to deal with. Doctors may seem harsh, but they have to tell loved ones when it's useless and the plug should be pulled. Everybody fears death. You can't practice for it. Your best bet is to make peace with it and let it come when it happens. If you're going to die, you should either write a letter or make a video to all people you deem important to be seen after your death. If someone you love has died, you should write them a closing letter, then symbolically burn it. The dying process too. Freud's concept of the unconscious mind asserts that the body knows when it's getting ready to terminate, hence, it creates delusions near that time to deal with this inevitable demise. These illusions are beautiful images of the person's view of heaven or a beautiful, peaceful place where one possibly talks to deceased relatives, pets, and encounters a powerful, white glowing entity known as God. I won't judge. You decide for yourself what you want to believe in, but the fact is that many people who know they will die shortly start to fantasize and create or live in this other world that I'll call the other side. For some, it's a garden where their friends are, for others it's a surrealistic or heavenly place where they meet all their deceased friends and relatives, talk to them and prepare to be with them permanently. Some people have dreams where they see this afterlife and deceased relatives who gently prepare them for death. Many of these people have one foot in reality and one foot in this so-called other side. They may not admit it when they talk to you, but let out clues in the way they talk that refers to their fantasizing about the afterlife, heaven, call it what you will, i.e., going home, going to meet my father, going to meet my maker, going to be with my wife, going to heaven, going to Happyland, going to sleep, going to meet Jesus, etc. So if you see your grandpa seemingly talking to himself or happy, you know his head is on the other side. These people who believe in the afterlife and are preparing to enter it are much more at peace than others who have no such concepts or beliefs. They often push relatives away because they don't want to subject them to the pain of their deaths, and they themselves don't want to see their relatives in pain because, in their hearts, they feel liberated because they know they'll soon be going home. It's all interesting stuff, and several people have made fortunes by writing books about their alleged near-death experiences. Whether there really is an afterlife is irrelevant, but what is important is how we choose to deal with our impending deaths. Will we choose despair or choose to delude ourselves with some joyful thoughts of paradise? It seems clear to me that it's good to fool yourself and make your last little bit of time more pleasant rather than simply dwell on the fact that you'll really be gone for good. Dying is a painful event that no one can avoid. When it happens in old age, it's alright because the person has lived his life and has had ample time to achieve his God-given purpose on earth. However, when it happens earlier, such as to a child or a young adult, it seems unfair and we grieve extra hard. Everybody will die, which is all the more reason why you should strive to make your life meaningful now. Death is part of the life cycle. It's that simple. We must accept it when it happens. You can even reverse the death process with the mind/body connection. Check out some books in the holistic medicine section at the library, number 615.5-8, for example, books by Norman Cousins on how he beat cancer with his mind by laughing himself well. Hospices are one step up from hospitals, but home healthcare is still best if you have a family who cares for you. If you're dying or you know someone who's dying, unless it's imperative that they stay in the hospital, quite simply, tell the doctors that you would like to die at home and make the proper arrangements to get out and continue with some kind of medical care at home. You might confront ethical dilemmas like consider letting them die rather than endure the pain in the limited state they're living in. Think long and hard before you decide on any mercy killing or assisted suicide scheme. Death is part of life. You must educate yourself about it. Find solace in religion and books that deal with the spiritual aspects of the near-death experience. When you feel death is near, take everyone close to you in by themselves and tell them goodbye in your own way. Have all your paperwork ready and in order. Have your funeral arrangements ready. You might want the family with you in the same room, or you might want to be with just your spouse or alone when you die. I say spare them the indignities, keep your death simple and private. The best way to die is in your sleep if possible, just never wake up. Once he dies, wait a while and make sure he's dead, because EMS will just cart him away even if he still could be alive. It's your choice to either call EMS, the local hospice, the undertaker directly, or in over 37 states, you're allowed to keep the body at home and do your own funeral. Accept the death of the body and try to believe that the soul is off in another, better place. Take time for grief and bereavement. If you're a young person with kids and are diagnosed with a terminal disease, make videotapes for them to watch as they grow up. Get all the paperwork in order. A book on the subject is Deathing, an intelligent alternative to the final moments of life by Anya Fuss-Graber. There is a museum of death in San Diego. The Dying Process 3. Death is God's ultimate revenge. A lot of people who are dying require home nursing care, help with transportation and personal care. People are relying increasingly on paid workers to provide the non-medical care needed by family members who are dying. Hospice care is a life-affirming approach to caring for people who are in the phase of a terminal illness. The focus is on relieving pain and controlling other symptoms. In general, a person becomes eligible to enter a hospice program when a doctor has determined that he or she has 6 months or less to live and refers him or her to a hospice program. Family members, friends, clergy, or healthcare professionals also can make referrals. Death is a taboo that almost no one wants to talk about. It seems so morbid, final, and empty, to die and be put in the ground where your body rots. Does your consciousness go on or not? I don't care if it does or not. I'll deal with it when I die. I live right now, moment by moment. I know I'll die someday. I'll deal with God and the afterlife then when it happens. I can handle my future death by living my life now, but death is still sad when I lose people and pets I love. You can't get away from feeling sad. You have to grieve and then move on. The departed one wants you to continue on to live a full life. You must find new spouses, lovers, friends, and pets. That's the way to live. Discuss your final wishes with your family. Talk with your family about what steps you want them to take if you become so incapacitated that you are being kept alive by machines. Prepare a living will. Prepare a will for yourself. Live as though you have 30 days to live. Answer the following questions to help you understand death more. What is death? What forms of death have you experienced? What are your religious beliefs about death? How does your spiritual life prepare you for death? What unfinished business do you have left on earth? Write your own eulogy. Are you satisfied that you're a good person who tried to live a decent life? Learn to accept death as part of life. The dying process. 4. Even in the midst of the death process, there can still be good, close, intimate times, often when you least expect them. People who are dying and their loved ones often get closer and more intense as they go through the process. Pretenses might go as they get real with each other. You can have wonderful times together. When some people know they're going to die, they will often get upbeat and brave for one short burst of energy to wish everybody goodbye before they pass on. Others become resigned, accept it calmly and simply wait until it overtakes them. Some people want to stop their medication. It's almost as though they don't feel pain anymore. They've made peace with their lives, talked to God and are ready to go off into the ether. They are warm and loving and feel at ease. They feel strong and do things they hadn't been able to do for the previous several months. They say what's on their minds, feel glorious for a few hours or days, share things with their lovers, make their peace then pass. People die much the same way they lived. Mundane people die mundane. Mean people stay mean. Deathbed epiphanies or cosmic resolutions are not really all that common except in movies. Even deathbed apologies and confessions could be met with indifference and cynicism. If your father was mean to you all his life then suddenly breaks down on his deathbed and tells you he wishes he had been a better father, perhaps all those memories of him beating you as a kid will stop you from greeting him with open-armed absolution. The popular notion of closure is largely a media-created myth. People cannot suddenly forget the way you treated them for the past 20 or more years to all of a sudden be warm, loving, and at ease. Even though the final hours of life can be a deeply intimate experience, these fleeting moments rarely allow for the conflicts of the past to be brought up and perfectly smoothed over. If you feel like a klutz now for having caused misery to your spouse or children in the past, try to resolve it before you're on your deathbed. You can do it gradually, getting closer and closer to your relatives over time, unlike when you're on your deathbed and everything is happening so fast. The truth is the best medicine. Come clean with each other. It's a two-way street. If your father asks forgiveness for being a louse while you were growing up, tell him you weren't exactly a good son either, doing things to try to get back at him for his behavior, harboring bad thoughts against them which you should have let go a long time ago. You can't change the past and probably can't forgive him completely, but by speaking honestly man to man, you will both come to a mutual understanding, which is the best you can do. Don't try too hard for the full resolution. Say what's on your mind and that's it. Better still, say it now while your relative is still in good health. There was a documentary on TV about a grandfather who molested several of his grandchildren, and then after he was sentenced to jail, the grandmother denied it right to her deathbed. With some people, why bother trying to say something or resolve an issue? They're stuck in their delusion and won't change, so why bring the stress on yourself by confronting them? Write them off. Forget it. Move on. The time for love is now while you are going strong, not when you or someone close is about to die. It is naive to think that anything we say on a deathbed will have much meaning or change other people. Speak your piece if you think you must for your own peace of mind, but not because you think it will suddenly make everything all right somehow. Most people are sure that they're going to another place somewhere in their version of heaven. There are a few atheists around who think they'll rot in the ground, but not too many. These beliefs, regardless of whether they're true or not, help put dying people at peace and unafraid about it. They're then ready for whatever happens. As a Christian, you should forgive everybody and hold no anger. Bravely wait for God to come get you. It's common for loved ones to feel hurt or abandoned when the dying person has accepted his fate and is ready to go. They feel as though this person wants to die and is leaving them behind. This is just their way of coping with their impending deaths. When a loved one says he has had enough and is ready to die, be ready, because what the mind wants, the body often obliges. Accept it, have your period of grief, then honor his memory by living a full life from then on. In order to protect loved ones, some people get distant because they want to spare them the intense emotions of watching a loved one die. This is why I suspect the Indian legends of folklore have the elders going off into the woods to die alone when they sense that their time has come. The relatives and caregivers do this too in order to avoid the intense emotions that often accompany the impending deaths of their loved ones. They don't want to break down and have a big, old cry fest right there, both full well knowing there's nothing they can do about it. Regardless of how a loved one is approaching death, whether they're resigned to their fate or struggling desperately to stay alive until the bitter end, your task as caregiver and lover is to make them as comfortable as possible while they go off into that good night in their own way. Say your piece, give them an opportunity to say whatever they want, then offer physical and emotional comfort by your very presence. Help your loved one die wherever he or she wishes to. If they're at a hospital, nursing home, or hospice and want to die, get them there any way you can. Myself, I want to die out in the country in the midst of nature because that's where I came from. My best memories as a kid were out in nature, in the forest by the lake, so I plan to buy a house in a wooded area as I get old and live there until I pass away. If I get sick and know it's time, I won't even contact the hospital, I'll just sit it out and let it come. Some people prefer to die in a hospice because it's more personable than a hospital. They're not trying to save you as they would in a hospital, and they have the people there to take care of your basic needs such as food, pain medication, and bowel movements, which you spare your relatives from having to do at home. It makes things easier for your relatives all around. Your main task is to help create a comfortable space for the person who is dying, regardless of the place, be it at home, the hospice, or at the hospital. Create a comfortable environment physically. Obviously, home is the ideal place. The person is more comfortable in familiar surroundings, has privacy, there's less noise, has things like a phone and TV at his fingertips, is surrounded by loved ones and controls his surroundings and destiny somewhat. If he wants flowers in the room or wants a pizza, he can do these things in peace, unhassled by the outside world. He's going to die. If he ain't going to do what he wants now, what's the sense of living then? A key philosophical turning point in the medical care of an individual is when the focus shifts from prolonging life to keeping the patient comfortable. Control the flow of visitors. Just because someone is dying doesn't necessarily mean he wants to see all his relatives and acquaintances, some of whom he hasn't seen for over 20 years and probably doesn't like all that much. Keep it real. Let him spend time with who he wants, and if he wants to be alone, leave him in peace. Just tell visitors this is not a good time. He's in pain. Could you come back in a couple of days? Even while someone is dying, they still have their identities and dignity. A guy who was a teacher, doctor, or leader in some capacity will resent being made to feel like the dependent one. Give him his dignity and independence. Talk to him as if he's still the wise, old sage, and ask him a few patronizing questions, acting as though you're mining him for his wisdom. Try to remove the specter of death from the situation as much as possible. I can't help but remember Leo Tolstoy's story about the death of Ivan Ilyich, a guy everybody knew was dying, even him, yet they all denied it and acted as though he'd recover and be footloose and fancy-free again. Even if you all know he's dying, try to act like normal every once in a while to get off the death bit for a while. If he's a real human being, he'll be relieved that you're not focusing on his death all the time. After all, we're all going to die sometime, so what's the big deal? If you can die at home as opposed to in a war, car accident, a terrorist bombing, or the victim of a crime, what more do you want? Dying people need to feel needed. I remember my sick, old grandmother persistent in her efforts to cook meals, wash clothes, and even make clothes, none of which us kids would ever wear because we thought they were too corny, but my mother let her do it to give her the illusion that she was doing something constructive. Some dying people want to be alone, reminiscent of the old lion who leaves the pride to die alone with dignity in peace. Others don't want to die alone. They want somebody there at all times. Relatives and caregivers have mixed feelings too. Some want to be there at death. Others don't. In any case, be as loving, as dependable as you can in your own way. Being present at the moment of death is not as important as having lived a full, happy life with this person and told them you loved them near the end. Stay calm. Try to avoid a hysterical scene, a grand scene where everybody congregates at the house, many of whom don't even know the dying person just there to make the scene, or a partying scene where Uncle Joe is dying in the bedroom upstairs while everybody is downstairs drinking, pretending to mourn but in actuality having a great, old fun time. There could be family conflicts that are right beneath the surface when everybody gathers at the house to pay their last respects. A brother who hasn't seen the sister that bad-mouthed his wife in over 10 years maybe can't stand being in the same room with her. Be ready for this kinda stuff. The thing about death is if it comes suddenly, we're shocked. If it comes slowly, we're all tired out. Death is not like it is in the movies. There is usually no great final scene of dignity, resolution, and grace while violins play in the background. It's considerably more mundane, like an ant dying. The earth doesn't skip a beat. He dies. Life all around goes on as normal. That's the way it is. For some people, death happens while asleep, obviously the way most people want to go. For others, it's traumatic. They lose control, gasp for their last few breaths or writhe in pain. If an individual has a lung disorder, a respirator could offset this painful way to die by giving the patient enough oxygen such that this isn't the cause of death but something else is. Some people furiously lash out as though in a futile attempt to fight death. If there's a lot of pain, pile the pain and sleep medication on in order to ease the burden, with the patient's consent, of course. The truth is that most people go unconscious then fade away slowly over several hours or days. It doesn't come suddenly like one moment, he's conscious, utters his famous last words then slumps over and goes into permanent unconsciousness. Death comes so gradually that you often won't be able to tell the exact moment that the person passes from life to death. They breathe slower, the heart slows down but they don't die until these functions stop totally. They might look dead while they're still alive, near death. Most people just get weaker and sleep/go unconscious until they die. The organs shut down one by one. Some die quickly as with heart attack victims, a brain aneurysm or stroke patients. Some people massively hemorrhage through the mouth, nose, and eyes. It's quick, often painless but because it was unexpected, nothing personal is resolved among the people. Physical death is a near universal experience. As the oxygen supply to the brain slows down, the body starts to shut down much like your computer when you press the shutdown key. It shuts off in stages, piece by piece. Some dying people sleep all the time, others rarely seem to sleep. It's their last bit of euphoric energy before they pass. Chapter 3. Some Death Wisdom. Death Commandments. Most of us live as though we think that the essence of life is something that we haven't reached yet, but life is how we live now day by day. Most of us aren't ready for the pain and suffering that goes with our death or the death of loved ones. The general rules of dying are: surrender your heart to what you naturally feel. Accept your impending death. Only self-love and love of others matters in the end. Live in life no matter how limited it is. If you have deep feelings you feel must express, tell the relevant people about them. Allow death. Be open to the grief that follows. Make peace with God and people. Forgive who you feel you must. Meditate on your death and/or the death of a loved one. Feel your way through intuitively as you go along. Love, the desire to be with other people, seems to be the overall comforting factor for most people near death, although some people accept it calmly by themselves. Usually, dying people are fine. Don't overfuss over them. Leave them be. Worry about yourself, that you're not falling to pieces, making the situation worse for everyone. Dying is a process of purification and growth. To go beyond death into your heart and soul and find what's deathless there, then embrace it until you pass on. Surrender to the natural is the best way to live life. Pain and depression are not inevitable. They're partially culturally indoctrinated. Death is painful and sad, but it's also a part of living. It's their season to die, it's your season to be a productive member of society and carry the torch. Life is not the automatic, unconditional choice. Many old and sick people are tired. They know it's their time. Don't prolong their agony. Don't make them feel like they must hang on no matter what. Let them go where nature takes them. No one can die your death, which is why you should object if people in your life are doing things against your wishes, like sticking you in a hospice, bringing all your relatives around if you don't want to see them, trying to get you to eat certain foods, etc. Many people have no choice. Death will take them when they least expect it. Be ready for it. If a loved one is dying in a foreign place like a hospital, bring them home to die in peace. Be ready to walk away from the death of loved ones to continue on with your life after the grief period subsides. The best you can do to honor your dearly departed loved one is to move on and become the best, most honorable individual you can be. Many dying people carry pain inside. If it's you, let it go. Many dying people are lonely and have no one special to love them, which is why volunteer work with the dying is so important. It's underrated because it's a taboo subject. Dannion Brinkley, the self-proclaimed arrogant guy who had a near-death experience, went on to become one of the greatest advocates for volunteering to comfort the dying around. He was sincere about it. I watched him when somebody filmed him on his rounds, and it was on TV on one of them death documentaries. He really brought a comfort to some of them. Death one-liners. I have a rendezvous with death. I have a rendezvous with death. At some disputed barricade. When spring comes back with rustling shade, and apple blossoms fill the air. I have a rendezvous with death. When spring brings back blue days and fair. It may be he shall take my hand, and lead me into his dark land, and close my eyes and quench my breath. It may be I shall pass him still. I have a rendezvous with death. On some scarred slope of battered hill. When spring comes round again this year, and the first meadow flowers appear. God knows 'twere better to be deep, pillowed in silk and scented down, where love throbs out in blissful sleep, pulse nigh to pulse and breath to breath, where hushed awakenings are dear. But I've a rendezvous with death, at midnight in some flaming town, when spring trips north again this year, and I to my pledged word am true. I shall not fail that rendezvous. Alan Seeger, 1888–1916. Lord, grant that my last hour may be my best hour. Old English prayer. If we really think that home is elsewhere and that this life is a wandering to find home, why should we not look forward to the arrival? C.S. Lewis. I'm not afraid to die. I'm looking forward to it. I know the Lord has his arms wrapped around this big sparrow. Ethel Waters. So he passed over and all the trumpets sounded for him, on the other side. John Bunyan, The Pilgrim's Progress. As a well-spent day brings happy sleep, so life well used brings happy death. Leonardo da Vinci. What is dying? Just what it is to put off a garment. For the body is about the soul as a garment, and after laying this aside for a short time by means of death, we shall resume it again with more splendor. St. John Chrysostom, 347–407. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves. And immortality. Emily Elizabeth Dickinson. Since life was such a pleasure, death coming from the same great source cannot displease us. Michelangelo. Happy and wise are those who endeavor to be during this life, as they wish to be found at their death. Apply yourself so to live now, that at the hour of death, you may be glad and unafraid. Thomas A. Kempis. If you leave anything behind, let it be that you touched people in their hearts and souls. Live until you die. Life is pleasant. Death is peaceful. Just relax when it's time to go. If you know you're going, make peace with it. Give yourself permission to die peacefully. Goodbye, proud world. I'm going home. Ralph Waldo Emerson. God's finger touched him and he slept. Alfred, Lord Tennyson. Life is pleasant. Death is peaceful. It's the transition that's troublesome. Isaac Asimov. Happy and wise are those who endeavor to be during this life, as they wish to be found at their death. Apply yourself so to live now, that at the hour of death, you may be glad and unafraid. Thomas A. Kempis. The battle is not against disease and death, it's about the battle to have an inspired attitude over falling into a pit of despair as you age. It's natural to die. The fact that we make such a big hullabaloo over it is all because we don't see ourselves as part of nature. We think because we're human we're something above nature. Maury in Tuesdays with Maury by Mitch Albom. We're only here for a short while. The best way to deal with death is to treat it like an old friend. Don't fear it. Gratitude for your life will leave you to die happy. The cure for all diseases is death. It's only when we truly know and understand that we have a limited time on earth and that we have no way of knowing when our time is up that we will begin to live each day to the fullest, as if it was the only one we had. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross. Love is the bridge between life and death. So many things are out of our hands. The last night that she lived. It was a common night. Except the dying, this to us made nature different. You don't get to choose how you're going to die. Or when. You can only decide how you're going to live. Now. Joan Baez, Daybreak, 1966. To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure. J.K. Rowling, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, 1998. We noticed small things. Things overlooked before. By this great light upon our minds. Italicized as it were. Emily Dickinson. Dying while very old is the best way to go. Look at death as going home to meet God. We sometimes congratulate ourselves at the moment of waking from a troubled dream, it may be so the moment after death. Nathaniel Hawthorne, The American Notebooks. Is it so strange that we want to meet again for the last time? To look at each other. To listen to each other's voices, ever so gently to touch hands? James Laughlin, The Least You Could Do. Watching a peaceful death of a human being reminds us of a falling star, one of a million lights in a vast sky that flares up for a brief moment only to disappear into the endless night forever. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, On Death and Dying, 1969. Ah, what an artist is dying! Roman Emperor Nero. I think I'm becoming a god. Roman Emperor Vespasian. The enlightened person understands and accepts the inevitability of death. Gracious dying is a huge, macabre, and expensive joke on the American public. Jessica Mitford, The American Way of Death, 1963. Hold fast to time. Guard it, watch over it, every hour, every minute. Unregarded, it slips away, like a lizard, smooth, slippery, faithless. Hold every moment sacred. Give each clarity and meaning, each the weight of your awareness, each its true and due fulfillment. Thomas Mann, The Magic Mountain. To a large degree, one cannot choose when one will die, however one should not live his life either towards or away from death. Do not be so foolish or reckless as to cause your own death for lack of caring. Anonymous, found on the internet. Make the most of it before you fade into the dust. The nearer you get to death, the more you enjoy life. Death is terrifying because it is so ordinary. Susan Cheever, about her father's death, Home Before Dark, 1984. We're alive tonight. And the cold grave is out of sight. I don't fear death, I fear the process. I hope it comes quietly in my sleep and quickly without a prolonged illness. Like a day that has been admired as a fine one, the light of it sets down amid mists and storms. I neither regret nor fear the approach of death if it is coming. I would compound for a little pain instead of this heartless muddiness of mind. Sir Walter Scott, Journal, September 1831. He who knows that the foundation of this life is spirit is out of danger. When he closes the gates of his senses at the end of his life, he has no troubles. Lao Tzu. People living deeply have no fear of death. Anais Nin, Diary, 1967. The knowledge that death is not so far away, that my mind and emotions and vitality will soon disappear like a puff of smoke, has the effect of making earthly affairs seem unimportant and human beings more and more ignoble. It is harder to take human life seriously, such as one's own efforts and achievements and passions. Edmund Wilson, 1963. Will I find it hard to die? I don't think death is particularly hard for people who loved life. Wise old man. In the face of death, I realized that it was not love that kept me clinging to life but unresolved anger. Love, real love flowing from me or toward me, sets me free to die. Henri J.M. Nguyen, Beyond the Mirror. The more spiritual you are, the less you fear death. Death merely means setting the soul free from the body. As a man abandons old clothes and acquires new ones, so when the body is worn out a new one is acquired by the self who lives within. Bhagavad Gita. I have offended God and mankind because my work did not reach the quality it should have. Leonardo da Vinci on his deathbed. Do not go gently into that good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. Dylan Thomas to his dying father. Every man ought to be inquisitive enough through every hour of his great adventure down to the day when he shall no longer cast a shadow in the sun. For if he dies without a question in his heart, what excuse is there for his continuance? Frank Moore Colby. He who can accept death lives freely. The greatest way to die is to have lived a great life. If death is like sleep but it's permanent, so what, there's no pain in that. If death is a movement to a higher plane then all the better. Get ready, it'll hit everybody. I'm taking a faithful leap in the dark. Religious guy going to meet God. Live such that you don't fear death but will be ready for it when it comes. I'm ready to meet my maker but I'm not so sure he's ready to meet me. Live as though you're ready to die, that every moment from here on in is a pleasant surprise. Live every day as if it was your last. One day you'll be right. Though it's all nice now, in 100 years we'll all be gone. Time cuts down all, great and small. When I die, have a drink for me then keep on living. I don't mind being dead, I just don't want to be half dead. Live well until you die. Live as though you're ready to die. Die as though you're trying to get to heaven. Death in the Bible. In the sweat of your face shall you eat bread, till you return to the ground, for out of it were you taken, for dust you are and to dust shall you return. Genesis 3:19. He is not a God of the dead, but of the living, for to him all are alive. Luke 20:38. That which is born of the flesh is flesh and that which is born of the Spirit is spirit. John 3:6. Yes, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me, your rod and your staff they comfort me. Psalms 23:4. God will redeem my soul from the power of the grave, for he shall receive me. Psalms 49:15. You shall guide me with your counsel and afterward receive me to glory. Psalm 73:24. Teach us to number our days, that we may apply our hearts to wisdom. Psalms 90:12. Precious in the sight of the Lord is the death of his saints. Psalms 116:15. He will swallow up death in victory and the Lord God will wipe away tears from off all faces and the disgrace of his people shall he take away from off the earth, for the Lord has spoken it. Isaiah 25:8. Many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And they that are wise shall shine as the brightness of the heavens and they that turn many to righteousness shall shine as the stars forever and ever. Daniel 12:2-3. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Matthew 5:4. In the resurrection they neither marry, nor are given in marriage, but are like the angels of God in heaven. Matthew 22:30. He that believes in the Son has everlasting life and he who believes not the Son shall not see life, but the wrath of God abides on him. John 3:36. Truly, truly, I say to you, he who hears my word and believes in him that sent me, has everlasting life and shall not come into condemnation, but is passed from death to life. John 5:24. Since the children are partakers of flesh and blood, Christ himself likewise took part in the same, so that through death he might destroy him that had the power of death, that is, the devil, and deliver them who through fear of death were all their lifetime subject to bondage. Hebrews 2:14-15. I am the resurrection and the life, he who believes in me, though he were dead, yet shall he live. John 11:25. We know that if this earthly tent we live in is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, eternal in the heavens. For in this tent we groan, earnestly desiring to be clothed with our dwelling from heaven. For we who are in this tent do groan, being burdened, for we wish not to be unclothed but to be further clothed, so that mortality might be swallowed up by life. Now he who has made us for this very thing is God, who also has given to us the guarantee of the Spirit. Therefore we are always confident, knowing that, while we are at home in the body, we are absent from the Lord. 2 Corinthians 5:1-7. None of us lives to himself and no man dies to himself. Romans 14:7. Behold, I show you a mystery, we shall not all sleep, but we shall all be changed. In a moment, in the twinkling of an eye, at the last trumpet. The trumpet shall sound and the dead shall be raised incorruptible and we shall be changed. For this corruptible must put on incorruption and this mortal must put on immortality. So when this corruptible has put on incorruption and this mortal has put on immortality, then shall be brought to pass the saying that is written, death is swallowed up in victory. O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory? 1 Corinthians 15:51-55. Since by man came death, by man came also the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive. 1 Corinthians 15:21-22. For me, to live is Christ and to die is gain. But if I live in the body, that means fruitful labor for me. Yet what I shall choose, I know not. For I am hard pressed between the two, having a desire to depart and to be with Christ, which is far better. Philippians 1:21-23. For I am persuaded, that neither death, nor life, nor angels, nor demons, nor powers, nor things present, nor things to come, nor height, nor depth, nor anything else in all creation will be able to separate us from the love of God. Romans 8:37-38. I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, Write, blessed are the dead which die in the Lord from now on. Yes, said the Spirit, that they may rest from their labors and their works do follow them. Revelation 14:13. And I saw the dead, small and great, stand before God, and the books were opened, and another book was opened, which is the book of life, and the dead were judged out of those things which were written in the books, according to their deeds. And the sea gave up the dead which were in it, and death and hell delivered up the dead which were in them, and they were judged every man according to their deeds. And death and hell were cast into the lake of fire. This is the second death. And whoever was not found written in the book of life was cast into the lake of fire. Revelation 20:11-15. And God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes, and there shall be no more death, neither sorrow, nor crying, neither shall there be any more pain, for the former things are passed away. Revelation 21:3-4.